his family member.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Walaikum salam. Yes, sir. I can hear you loudly and
Okay,
clearly.
good. Can you see me?
Not yet.
Okay, I don't know what to do about that. Let's see what happened here. Oh, start video. There we go. There we go. Now can you see me?
What's cooking? Good looking.
All right.
Hey.
Good. All right.
Hey.
There. Now you see, you got me. You made me jealous of
I
your
see what you
plant
did.
there.
I see
Yeah.
what you did back there.
Yeah. You made me jealous. So I borrowed this from my wife's living
Yeah,
room. You see.
that's a
So,
good borrow there. Hey, I bought this for my wife in the living room.
is that right? Okay.
I
Well,
had a
then
different
makes us.
plant to begin with, and she said that plant's going to die.
There
That's
we
not
go. No.
that plant can't be out of the sunlight like that.
Okay.
She said, take this snake plant. So the wives
Yeah,
know. They
there
know.
we go.
All
Right.
right. So
Good
good day
then.
to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wonderful. Good morning to you, brother. It's good to
Yes,
see with
good
you.
day.
Good to see you. Good to be joined to you. This I learned this about this this joining. The Vikings called it bonded. You see, they
Yes.
recognized it, and I learned about it from F. Nolan Ball, one of the finest men, if not the finest man I ever met in my life so far. God rest him. He was a pastor, called himself an apostle. Not that he was likening himself to any of the 12, but he was talking about a man who's walking in authority, you see. And this was an alpha male who had truly balanced the right and the left brains and had developed a spiritual awareness that I have yet to find an equal to in any of my life's experiences, and on a personal basis, face to face. I've seen some people close to F. Nolan Ball in his walk with God, but not very many. And he impressed upon me the reality of being joined by heaven to some unknown, unseen, yet future destiny that was unveiling itself as you walk together. So I think that this is what's happening between us, even though we haven't had the good fortune of meeting face to face, embracing and sharing bread together, all that sort of thing. But I truly feel that wanting that, Allah has made it possible that we use this wonderful tool and over the internet to be able to allow that to unfold. And so I believe with all my heart, dear brother, that we are bonded and that we are joined together by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for a specific purpose. And we're realizing that purpose, and we're doing it week to week and hour to hour, moment to moment during these hours as an act of faith. And I think you realized that. I realized it. We realized it almost immediately, 5, 6 months ago, however long it's been now. And I'm bringing this up because I want to continue from last week's discussion of this thing called faith, this thing that cannot be unfolded without amana, without trust in God's purpose, you see. And this purpose cannot be fulfilled on an individual basis. We have to fulfill it with respect to relationships with each other's brothers and sisters, and especially with spouses, you see. And this amana has to be there in order for faith to be realized. And faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. And there's an element here that I want to bring into the conversation, into the discussion, brother. And I hope you can address it from a Nunetic perspective. And that is, again, I refer back to this thing you called Rahim. You see, this element of the extra grace, you see, that makes this unseen seeable, that allows us to perceive the evidence, you see. And because we perceive the evidence on one or two occasions, whatever it is that we were working towards, it actually fulfilled itself. Then after that, you see, you develop this sense of certainty. And when you develop this sense of certainty, it's not a question of faith anymore. It's a question, okay, how's this going to work out? Let's get excited about it. Let's get on with it. Let's do what's necessary so we can see the end of the journey, so we can see the fruit, so that we can see what it is that Allah has in store for us. Because what Allah has in store for you is always greater than what you can imagine, always. And it's different from what you imagine as well. You have some sort of an idea what the tree is going to look like, but hey, when that tree is actually right there in front of you, and you're taking down a piece of that fruit and you're biting into it, boy, this is greater than the imagination now, isn't it? This is a reality that has been, what? My God, it came from the unseen. Well, now you say, look, doctor, there's a seed that came from the seed. What's in the seed, mister? What's in the seed? Can you see that? Can you? Please tell me, Mr. Philosopher, what is that thing that's in the seed? Okay. Now, in the Quran calls it kun fayakun. So what we have is faith in kun fayakun, the evidence of what it is that Allah has already spoken. Okay. And we're looking for that evidence. It's like jumping in the ship, getting your crew together, setting yourself on a course, and then heading out to sea and say, okay, what are we going to find? We know it's there. How long is it going to take us to get there? What are we going to find, and who are we going to find when we get there? And then what are we going to do about it? You see, so it's a wonderful, exciting journey.
Yeah.
And people are filled these days, especially Muslims, are filled with futility. They're filled with a sense of, God, it's just fate. I hate that philosophy, It's a sort of a predestination, and you can't do anything about it. It's already decided. No. I'm telling you, there's a bubble that you can enter when you are in this world as an incarnate human being, and that bubble has everything to do with Rahim. But you can't reach into that Rahim unless you activate the faith.
Yes, that's right.
You understand? So
absolutely,
here we go.
This is beautiful.
Here we go again, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen.
Yes.
And what can you tell us about what I've just discussed? And give us the evidence from the words that are in the Quran and wherever else in the scripture you find these things, or in the creation that you find these things expressed, because it's there. I know it's there, and I know you've seen it. Dear brother, inshallah.
I get the microphone early today?
Oh, of course, why not?
We're gonna do a tag team today, man.
No, listen, I'm
gonna throw this back in your court. This is great.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'm done for the moment. You got the ball now.
I was just writing my 20th book on what you just said, though. I'm scribbling. I'm scribbling. All right. So I also begin with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We invite Allah into our conversation for quality control. And we ask
Amen.
Allah
Yes.
to make it less of our opinions about things and more
Yes.
of investigation into his truth.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking once again about the term Iman and Amana, which some people translate as belief. I don't. I don't think it means, in fact, I know it doesn't mean belief because you can believe in anything. And Amana is understanding and trusting certain things, particularly those things that Allah has revealed for us to have faith in, with him being number one, numero uno. So belief becomes a human construct, and it's necessary for the developing mind to grab hold of. So things that you introduce to the human brain early on in life are things that become beliefs, including who your mother and daddy are. You only believe it until you can prove it. You believe it just because they told you that, but you do the same thing with Santa Claus and, the Easter Bunny, These are not real things, but we believe them, and we'll fight you if you tell us in class that, there's no Santa Claus. Oh, yes, there certainly is. Pardon me. Yes, there certainly is a Santa Claus. My mommy told me. See, you go to the one you trust to not lie to you.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
So trust, I'm sorry, I just need to silence my phone. Forgot to do that. So when we talk about Iman, we're really talking about faith and trust being the same substance. We're talking substance, right?
Yes.
Faith and trust are the same substance. Now, I'm going to do a little consonantal connections based on my Nunetics method for you. Now, audience out there, when you hear Nunetics, don't mistake it for like Dianetics, or some crazy
Please
guru,
don't.
some guru, introduction of some guru philosophy, some Indian, whatever, Hail Marys. That's not what this is. Nunetics is simply the method of identifying letters in words based on those letters' connections with what is called al-fitra. And the simplest way to understand the fitra is just to think about so-called Mother Nature. The things that you run across all of the time out there when you study the environmental areas of the universe, but more importantly, the things that you discover when you begin to look out there and understand that those same things actually exist in you as what is called a microcosm. That's the macrocosm. You're the microcosm. The fitra covers both realms. And the fitra begins with an understanding of your own body parts. All of the letters in the Arabic language system are also parts of the human body. So you don't even have to go to school necessarily to understand the fitra. All you have to do is pay attention to what all of this is. That's your first education. That's fitra education. All right. So let's see if we can find Iman in this body's fitra.
Oh, wonderful.
Isn't that great? Yeah. Forget about the hadiths and all of that.
Yes, sure.
Let's see if we can find Iman. Muslims, you have to believe in Allah, Iman, Billah, Okay, well, let's see what that's talking about. Because Allah said that this is Din al-Fitra. That's in the 30th surah, 30th ayat of the Quran. That this is Din al-Fitra. And he said, and do not cause any disturbances in it. He said, do not cause any alterations in Allah's fitra. He didn't say don't cause any interruptions in Medina University or in some Saudi school. He said, do not seek to make alterations on his fitra, the fitra that he has created and introduced to humanity, because he patterned humanity upon that fitra, he says. All right. So you should be a walking reflection. I and the rest of us, we should be walking reflections of the fitra. So when we come across these all important terms in the Quran, like Iman, we should be able to find it in the fitra, beginning with your own body. So
Mm.
I believe that the wise sages of old school Europe that produced the Renaissance, I believe that they were deeply invested in the study of the Quran when they ran into those Muslims who journeyed out of Spain into Italy, into other parts of Europe, and began establishing the sciences. Because that's when the scientific terms appeared in the English lexicon. If you check the dictionary and start looking for science terms, they're going to appear around the 12th century, 13th century, all the way into the 17th century. Science. Where did they get all of that? All of a sudden, they were self-proclaimed dark age people. That's not the words of people observing them from the outside. That's the words of them on the inside saying, we were in the dark ages, the age of what is called in Arabia for their dark period. They call it the age of ignorance.
Yes.
So what brought them suddenly out of all of this darkness into the light? I believe it was their meticulous study of the Quran, but they did it in secret. They remained Christians. They remained whatever other religions they had claimed, but they began to study the Quran in secret. And that's part of what produced the whole Masonry Shriner episodes in history. That's my personal, call that a belief.
Okay.
Only for people out there. But it's what I trust because my research has shown me that this is more than likely the thing that happened. Okay, now let's get to the crux, the language. I mentioned last week that the word amana, that's the verb from which Iman is derived, that it has what is called the A of negation attached to it. It's also called the A privative because it deprives the word coming after it of its meaning. And I gave examples even from the English language, such as amoral, not moral, asexual, not involved in sex, apolitical, don't try and get me to vote. I don't believe in none of that stuff. See, when you put that A on many English words, it negates the meaning of the word that comes immediately after it. It's the same thing for many Semitic languages. Hebrew, Syriac, wherever you go, you're going to find that A of negation on a percentage, not all of the words that begin with A, but on a percentage, a great percentage of words that begin with the A sound. For us, this would be Aleph and Ain. Those two letters give you the A sound. Aleph and Ain are actually the same sound. Okay? Now, if this is true, then how do we read this word, Iman, for further clarification and elucidation? You separate the I sound, the A, in I, ma, na. Now you only deal with the two consonants that are left over. That's the M, I, ma, and the N, na, I, ma, na. So take the A off, now you have man or man, which is a word. That's a word in the Arabic lexicon. And it also came to be a word in the English lexicon. Man, the human type. And man is only man according to their etymology dictionaries. Man is only a man when he and she begin to think. That's the first meaning in the online etymology dictionary. It means to think. It gives the word man as a verb, an action word, not as a noun. See, just because I'm born into a male physiology and biology doesn't make me a man, according to this original meaning for the word man. Man means that I have to first learn how to make decisions about things. I have to first learn to weigh the moral consequences of things that I say and do. Then I become a man, because man means to think, and it also says that it means mind. Man means mind. And you can see the M and the N even in the English word mind.
Yes.
Now, you see it also in the dictionary, the English dictionary. When you look up man, you're also going to see that it's related to the word hand, H-A-N-D. So where is this stretch? How are they stretching it from the mind all of the way to the hand? Because the hand has a definitive 5 fingers in the human. And they long ago associated 5 fingers with the 5 basic senses ruling in the mind. So if I tell you about a manual, it's a handbook. If I tell you about a manacle, it goes around the hand. If I tell you, and you can go on and on and on, manufacture, that's something that's done with my hands. When you run across these words in English that begin with man, or that include man, it's talking about things that you do to manipulate things with your hands. However, look at the connection in history. And thank you for giving me this time, because these explanations are very important for understanding Iman. When the human being's hands became free, according to the archaeologists and the sociologists and the people who study the history of human physical development, they say the human at one point was crawling around on all fours like the average animal who has 4. And whatever happened in history to spark an interest in the human standing upright, whatever happened, the missing link, I don't know what other crazy stuff they have out there to explain that. But the point is that humans began to stand up. And when we began to stand up, our hands became free.
Yes.
See? So if the hands became free, and the hands represent the 5 senses operating in the dome, then that is the true origin of the word freedom.
Yes.
You cannot have freedom until your dome becomes free. To do what? To think, to be man. See? Now, once the hands became free, that opened up a whole new level and a whole new responsibility for humans to begin building their environment. See, we were no longer crawling around without the use of our hands because we needed them to crawl. We were now standing, and because our hands were free, now we could pick fruit, we could fight in the battle, a lot of things we could do with our hands being free. All right. So all of that has to do with the development and the evolution of the human mind and where Allah wanted that mind to go. Now, how does Iman fit into this equation? Because Iman means not mind. See? Now, as a Muslim reader of Al-Quran, I'm speaking to all of you now there in listener land and viewer land. Mu'min, which they translate as one of the faithful or the believers and so forth, that's a higher achievement than just being Muslim. Allah says, do not say that you have submitted when faith, Iman, has not yet entered your heart. All right? Yeah. So being a Muslim is one thing, but it doesn't mean you have Iman. To have Iman, you have to trust what Allah said without the mind even having to come into it. It comes into it in the beginning stages. But as that trust in God increases in you, you don't have to keep referring back to the ABCs of it.
Can I interrupt for just a minute?
Yeah.
What you're saying, if I hear you correctly, is that faith, Iman, is an acquisition.
Yeah, I love it. It is an acquisition. Absolutely. And it's an acquisition that requires that you do some work.
Yes.
Some people inherit acquisitions. The Quran speaks about an acquisition on the part of the faithful people that is an acquisition that comes as the result of hard work. It's called muflihun, al-muflihun. Allah calls us that. That's from falah. And muflih is a farmer. You know what kind of hard work that is because you do it.
Yes.
So you and your family, you are under the term muflih. But we also refer to falah as success. Hayya ala al-falah. Right? Come to the success. So how is the farmer successful? Because the farmer trusts the process. And the farmer is a witness to how to get that vegetation growing He's a witness to how to do that, not because he did it once. He did it once and he made a mistake. He whatever happened, he didn't let enough water. He didn't water the crops when the sun was burning off the moisture. But now, as time accrues, he's learning the proper method for growing the vegetation, growing a particular kind of fruit or vegetable in the garden, in the farm. He's learning the science behind that. And because he does it over and over again as a scientific method, he trusts the method. Mm. And he no longer has to second guess the method.
Yes.
He doesn't have to, every time he plants a seed, say, okay, now what's next? Water. He doesn't have to keep doing that. He already knows it. So his mind is taken out of it. He trusts the process. Now his mind can go on to discover new things to do and to explore and to investigate. But the faith trust mind, that's a done deal. I already know if I do this and Allah is going to do that, he's going to bring the rain and then the winds and all of that. And so he already knows that. So Iman means not mind. Now, let me give you a closer example. The word trust, Trust, let's isolate the important consonants in that. That would be the T, the R, and the S. Forget about the T on the end. It's a suffix. It's the same as the Arabic, what's called ta marbuta, the tying T. They call it the feminine T. See? Because on the female, she has T's that tie maybe to her breast. Those T's in animals are called teats, and humans they're called tits. Nevertheless, they represent the letter T. Arabic and in English. So if you see an Arabic word like hayat, understand that that's a feminine principled word. If you see a feminine T at the end of something like fitratullah, that means that Allah is expressing the fitra through a feminine agent. And all that means, doctor, is that it allows for itself to be influenced by outside agents. That's all. Just like the female can be influenced by the male germ and produce a product. Every word that ends in a T means that there's a possible outcome that increases the value of that thing. So trust is the same thing with its feminine ending T. Trust is something that you have to invest in, like you invest in a female when you marry her. Yes. Because she is going to possibly produce many things out of herself. That's what trust is. I trust you in this relationship. As an example, you trust me with your son every week to teach him, right? But you're expecting a product, like the female expects a product when she's invested in.
Yes, of course.
Now, so TRS are the essential consonants in the word trust. So look for other words in English and in Arabic, but let's stick with English for now, that carry the TRS letters, even if the letters are scrambled or inverted. They don't have to be in that particular order. They just have to be those particular letters because it's the letters that are holding the frequency of the meaning of the word. Now, look at the word torso. And its TRS connection. That means that there's something about the torso that will also be connected thematically to the word trust. You ready to dig just a little bit deeper, Doctor?
Please, please. We're going towards something that has to do with support.
Absolutely. But support without you having to think about it.
Yes. Gotcha.
Look, your head, you have to always constantly be thinking about how to handle your head. Even when you go to bed, you want a comfortable pillow. See? That's the head. Your arms, you have to think about those because when you reach for something, you have to be conscious that you're not going to knock something else off of the shelf or whatever, that you closed the refrigerator, like I didn't do the other day. My wife got at me, right? So Your legs, you have to be conscious of step by step by step. And when I say conscious, I don't mean every step you're thinking about every step, but the legs are a different situation than what's happening in the torso. You could lose the legs, as you know, and you could still make progress as a human being. You could lose the arms, make progress as a human being. You could lose your vision in the head. You could lose your sense of smell, right? You could lose your taste. You could lose your hearing, but you can still function as a human being. So says Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. That's two examples.
Of course.
Now, but if you begin losing those things inside the torso, buddy, you're going to be in trouble if you don't get that fixed. Something happens to your heart, you better look into that right away. Your kidneys begin to fail, that's a problem. See, your spleen begins to go awry, you better check that out with your local doctor, right? Because the torso has organs operating within it that are supposed to operate without you having to give that kind of conscious attention to them.
Yes.
Like you do with whether this thing you're going to pick up is hot. You see, it's on the stove. I don't know if they left the fire under this pan. When I go to pick the pan up, not realizing that they left the fire on, and I burned myself because that's the nature of the hand. It has to be careful what it touches. You have to be careful what you smell. Oh man, how long has this meat been in the refrigerator? See, we know these things. How long have you been keeping? Is this tonight's dinner? Oh heck no, right? So you got to be careful even at what you look at because, oh man, why is that so bloody? Why is that scene in the movie so damn bloody? So the five senses, you got to be conscious. That's what the five senses are here to give you, your consciousness. You got to be conscious, but you don't have to be conscious of how many times your heart beats in your chest per minute or how much blood is flowing through this torso to get to the many other parts of the body. You trust it. And within the gut, as you know, I believe they say exists maybe at least 75% of your immune system. I've heard up to 85% of the immune system exists in the gut. They call it your second brain because it's operating on your behalf without your conscious awareness or conscious attention to it.
Yes.
Allah is regulating all of that activity in the torso. Okay? So the torso is the major area of the body that you trust to get the job done, keeping you alive without you having to keep referring to it, keep reminding the heart, hey, what did you skip a beat right there? Or hey, how many times did you count how many times per minute you were supposed to, did you increase when I ran up the stairs? What's going on, heart? You don't have to ask the heart that. The heart automatically knows to increase the blood flow, increase the oxygen in the blood because you just ran up a flight of stairs or you had to run around the block or you ran track or whatever. And it automatically knows to increase and then it automatically knows to go back to baseline. Without you saying, okay, slow down, heart, slow down, heart. Sometimes you say that. You can say that and talk to your organs, but on the most part, Allah has already locked that activity within the torso to do exactly what it does. So I went all the way around that mulberry bush to come back to this point. That is that Iman is trust in the same way that you trust your organs in the torso and in the way that you trust your immune system to keep you alive. Immune, Iman, same consonants. I believe that's where they got the word immune from studying the Quran's concept of Iman. Trust without having to refer back to the process. See, so the process has happened so many times and giving you exactly the same results every time it does what it does, that you no longer have to pay conscious attention to it. Our friendship, we haven't met each other, as you mentioned, but our friendship has now developed into a friendship based on Iman. Why? Because we're doing the same thing over and over again and we're getting the same results. And the blessings of Allah is obviously upon our relationship. So that is Allah having faith in the process that Allah has established. One more point, and I'll hand this over to you. You mentioned the Rahim factor. Let's call it the Rahim factor.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
So we open up with what is called the Basmala Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And most Muslims, I would venture to say, do not know the difference between Rahman and Rahim. They think that because they contain the same consonants, that they mean the same thing. So you'll hear translations, in the name of God, the merciful, the merciful. They don't even change them sometimes. The compassionate, the merciful. Another person will say the merciful, the compassionate, because they
Yes.
think those words are saying the same thing. And these are some of the top scholars
Yes.
as
Yes.
translators of the Quran, but they get confused because they're not understanding the value of consonantal connections. They're not understanding the value of other elements in language that causes shifts in the meanings of things. It will still be related if it has the same consonants, but it's not going to be saying the same thing. Just like you are related to your cousin Pookie,
Yes. Yes.
Pookie Wilson, but you're not the same family,
Mm-hmm.
but you have some of the same genetics.
Right.
So these letters are also genetics. I call them letter genetics. And if they have exactly the same formation and expression, then they say exactly the same, not exactly, but then they say related to things. But if they have uh, letters that are interposed or that can be interchanged, like the R with the L and that kind of thing, or like the B with the V, those are interchangeable. Then they're going to be like cousin Pookie. They'll be related to you, but they won't be from your particular family. So we get that out of the way. Now, I want the audience to begin paying closer attention to the pronunciation of Quranic words. So we have the R, the H, and the M sound in the word Rahim. But we also have the R, the H, and the M sound in the word Rahman. The only difference is that there's an N on the end, a Nun. Other than that, they're the same exact consonants. And this is why the scholars get confused in terms of what they mean. They keep thinking that they mean the same thing because they carry the same letters, but they really don't because there's a Nun on the end of Rahman, where there is no Nun or N on the end of Rahim. Now, why is there a Nun on the end of Rahman? You have to know what Nun means. Nun means seed. And every time you see it, it means replication of that, whatever it's talking about. So if Rahman is from the same root as the word Raham, which means womb, then it means that the womb can produce and replicate over and over again. But Rahim doesn't carry the Nun because the Rahim is your individual, as you would call it, acquisition. Rahman is your collective acquisition. You got from Allah his rahmah, his mercy, but you're not the only one who got it. Everybody else got it too. See? Adolf Hitler received Allah's rahmah because he was able to eat food. He was able to eliminate, his bowels. He was able to love. See? So that's a part of Allah's rahmah, which he gives to everybody without distinguishing good, bad, evil, righteous. Everybody has the sun shine on them when it comes up in the morning, if they're in its vicinity, right? But everybody doesn't qualify for the Rahim. And this is what the scholars will tell you. I'm just giving them further reasons for that logic. Everybody does not. Only those who have been obedient to the word of Allah, the messages of the Quran in this case, only those will experience Allah's Rahim. And Imam W.D. Muhammad translated that word as the merciful redeemer, Ar-Rahim, the merciful redeemer. He redeems you. So when you go to redeem your bottles at the grocery store, and they said, we're only taking Coca-Cola bottles, you can't come with Canada Dry cans.
No.
Listen, we said this line is only for those who have Coca-Cola bottles, right? So you redeem them, 10 cent, whatever, whatever they're worth. I don't even think we do that anymore. You used to redeem bottles and cans when we were young. But you're only taking certain items. That's all Allah is. He redeems only those who have been strictly obedient and adherent to his messages, his call, as he calls it in the Quran. Everybody else who has been doing their own boogie woogie thing, they got the Rahman part, but they don't get the Rahim part. Because the Rahim is a quality, whereas the Rahman is a quantity. You get the quantity because you need access to the quantity so that you can begin thinking about your quality. Okay, you got super rich. Now, what have you done with it? See, that's where the quality of your life and your experiences come in. If you got super rich and it only served you and yours, then you fail the test for qualifying for the Rahim. So I said all of that to say that the Rahim has to do with qualification. The Rahman has to do with quantification, to put it in those terms. Now, lastly, if you look at the letters that both of these words contain, then you're looking at the R, which means movement. You're looking at the H, which means breath, heavy breath, and you're looking at the M, which means water. So it literally says, as a word, movement of the breath on the water. Movement of the breath upon the water. And we know that temperature changes, air, I should say, changes the temperature of water. Right? Yeah. So if the air quality is cold, then the water can turn to ice. If the air quality is warm, extremely warm, then the water can actually evaporate. So the breath is the conductor for determining what is going to eventually happen to the water. Now, what do we mean by water? We're talking about your moral aptitude. Water in scripture represents, as one meaning, the moral nature that makes decisions based on what is good and bad. That's why we want to keep our water clean in the same way we want to keep our morals clean. When water becomes dirty, it becomes unpalatable for the system. When your moral life becomes filthy, and that moral life becomes not compatible with the life that Allah charged you to uphold and dignify. So going back, round circle, to Iman, meaning I don't have to think about it. Just like I don't have to think about my heart beating, I don't have to think about my stomach churning and breaking down food. Iman is something that you're not supposed to be giving that kind of conscious attention to. Iman is something that you're supposed to be trusting. Your relationship with Allah has to grow to the point where you trust it. You, as they say, I can close my eyes on that. See, that's Iman. I don't need my mind anymore. I can close my eyes. My mind doesn't have to be involved in it. I trust the person in the bed next to me not to kill me in my sleep. We do this every night with them. Yeah, you trust them not to, you trust your son and messing around in his room with some science lab experiment, not to burn down the house.
Yes.
Right. So trust is when you can say, I don't need to think about it. I don't need, oh, that's a done deal. Just go ahead and do that. I trust you to do that. So I'm saying this to us, especially to the Muslim audience, but to all people in the audience, that you need to work at building trust between yourself and other people. You have to work on building the trust. And once the trust is built, you've actually built the torso portion of your life, where things become regulated and activated in a way that you can go do something else now because you trust the process. What did you do the first time to make a friend? You shook a hand. Say, shake a hand, make a friend. That's what you did the first time. Hey, I haven't seen you in these parts. What's your name? You're out there in Kentucky. You know how to do this with the Amish and the other people. Hey, partner. Hey, neighbor. Once you get to know the neighbor and the neighbor has done certain things over and over again in front of you or with you, then, oh, yeah, I trust that guy next door. I'm not worried about him. I trust him. You know, we have some experiences together. So I've learned to trust him. All right. That's what Iman is in a well, it's not a nutshell, but in a seed shell. The seeds called Nunetics. So thank you for giving me that time to express those thoughts.
You're most welcome. Alhamdulillah. This is an awful lot to unpack, and you just did some significant teaching and preaching at the same time. Thank you very much, Instructor. I truly appreciate what you've just said, and I encourage our listening audience to review this tape again and again, because it is now jam-packed and it needs a certain degree of unpacking, not to improve your understanding, but to improve your retention.
Yes.
And the activity that is the result of that retention. So, you know, there's so much in what you've just said, I hardly know where to begin with this meager attempt to reflect my appreciation and my reception of it. It's just almost overwhelming. Very compact, very concise, very precise, and it gives us an insight, a greater insight into the purpose of Nunetics. And one of the things that occurred to me, amongst many others, as you were speaking, is that Nunetics and the science of numerology are somehow connected. And I have only looked at numerology at a surface level. I've read a few texts on it in the past, and it never thoroughly interested me. But now my interest is sparked, you see, because what you're talking about is the relationship of letters to meaning, and what numerologists are talking about is the relationship of numbers to meaning. Now, I know these things, these interpretations can be manipulated and corrupted, and I know that that's been done to serve selfish purposes, but there's a purity somewhere in these sciences that was developed by the medieval sciences who led into the Renaissance, and I am a bit familiar with some of their treatises, and they wrote in an occult language in order to preserve the truth from the religious extremists of the day, who would have killed them and who would have burned their books, you see. So they were not all satanic occult practitioners of the black arts, okay? And that needs to be stated now, especially since you brought it up in the introduction to your remarks. And I want to endorse that perspective a little bit further. So there is a relationship between numerology and Nunetics, and that needs to be explored. You see, you've probably done some of that on your own, but I'm sure that the next generation coming up behind us needs to look again at those treatises, what it is that they were talking about when they discover the four humors and the four directions of the universe, and how they numbered them, and what their relationship is to the alphabets that were used to hide this knowledge. You see, because first of all, you got two levels of hidden knowledge here. You've got the truth hidden by the secret codes that these these Renaissance writers, alchemists, if you will, used. You see, for example, somebody asked me this years ago when I was a bit more active in reading this literature, and I'm not anymore. I'm read years and years ago, so it doesn't all stay with you. But somebody asked me, well, what is the meaning of this answer that was given by an alchemist to one of the sultans when he asked him, well, what is the meaning of refining of gold? How do you do it? Because the sultan's looking at the material. He wants more gold. He wants like the spinner in the fairy tale to take the thread and spin it into gold. That's what he wants, okay? And so the alchemist realized that if he didn't answer this question very carefully, he was going to lose his head. So he hid the answer in a very long narrative, describing, well, you've got to take so many of these stones and so many of those stones. Then you've got to do it at a special hour, and you've got to do it under certain circumstances, and then you got to bury them, and then you have to wait for them to fumigate and get rid of the poisons and all this sort of thing.
Right.
And, it goes on for pages and pages and pages. And the fellow who asked me this was an alim in Malaysia. He said, what was this sultan looking for? How was he going to get the gold out of this? And the whole treatise is about purification of the nafs, is purification of the human soul. It has nothing to do with the making of gold.
Right.
So
beautiful.
I'm stating this for the sake of our listeners who have never gotten anywhere near any of these treatises, and they're listening to, superficial explanations from know-it-alls who don't know anything, because they've never really read the literature and they haven't perceived it. They haven't activated their faith so they can take part in this other measure of Raheem, which gives you the guidance to understand this stuff. They never did it. So these guys are just thinking, oh, this is going to how you're going to make gold and get more of it. And then there are other political sciences who say, oh, this is how you manipulate the masses in order to get them to produce the gold for you. And the alchemist is talking about the purification of the soul. None of the former. But he saved his head and he preserved the knowledge, you see. And this same knowledge, as you said, he extracted it from Al-Quran. He extracted it from the books of Solomon. He extracted it from these other treatises and the paratheological treatises that accompanied Scripture, that were written by men and women like himself. You see, he said, "Oh, it's handed down generation to generation to generation." Okay, well, there is this stream of knowledge, and it's been put aside. It's been marginalized by those who want the real gold, by those who want to manipulate the political masses to spin the gold for them. So there you have people like the fellow in Egypt who made riba legal, you see. So there is an element of truth here to what you're saying that goes beyond anything that is taught in the madrasas. It goes beyond anything that is spoken of or preached from the minbars and the pulpits. Okay, as I was saying yesterday in our seminar, most people just have an understanding for the superficial layer, and then anything that goes into the deep, you see, the deep things of God, they remain blind to. They can't see it. They have not entered into this realm of faith that activates the Rahim, that gives them this additional nur, and it's specific for each one. And then every once in a while you bump into a couple of characters like you and me, and we're saying, oh yeah, well, yeah, that's what it is. That's what it means. Oh, he said such and such. And I say, yeah, that's what it means. That's exactly what it means. I discovered it from another source. All right. And it means the same thing. That's what it is. And when you say, talking about the root, and what's this root becoming? It's becoming the material. And this is the Rahim.
Yes.
Material's already there. In Genesis, it says the Spirit of God brooded over the surface of the waters. Well, what's brood mean? That's like a chicken sitting on her eggs, waiting for things to hatch. And while he was brooding, he gave them some extra grace. Why? Because while they were hatching, whatever they were doing in that water, some of them were activating this grace. Some of them were activating the faith. Some of them. And what did he say? He didn't say, let there be light. He said, become light.
Yes.
He said, be light.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, my goodness me. So, look,
this is wonderful.
Ladies and gentlemen, please don't despair. And please don't be too harsh with your leaders, wherever they are at the minbar. They're acting according to what they know, and what they know is very limited, very limited. And yeah, they have naturally marginalized people like Instructor Bilal and myself because we don't fit the cultural norm. Okay, we just don't do it. Why don't we do it? Well, can I tell you a secret? It's because we have Rahim. With that being said, brother.
Yeah.
Until next week, hey?
Yes.
Until next week.
The vapors.
Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And to the audience, study hard. Thank you, doctor. Get some rest, man. I don't know how you do it.
Alhamdulillah.
All right.